Hello, how are you? I'd like to talk today about Sri Aurobindo's yoga because it enriches your understanding of yoga and mine. It's just wonderful to see what this great yogi with this great mind thought of yoga, how he tried to help humanity. He was inspired and taught by Swami Vivekananda, who was a direct disciple of, if not the leading disciple of, Sri Ramakrishna. So there are a lot of good ties here. And my hope is that you'll be enriched by this. I'm not an Aurobindo expert. I'm an Aurobindo lover, as I explained to one of his devotees who had a house on the grounds at that beautiful city that they are creating in India. But you can have your own understanding. This is just to add to your understanding and appreciation of yoga and maybe help you experience more deeply and fully your yoga. As you know, there are many kinds, and we're going to get into those in his viewpoint. Also, years ago, as I was sharing yoga with people, I met several people who practiced Aurobindo's yoga, and they studied with me just because they wanted fellowship. But they had some very strong feelings. For example, they thought that Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga were kind of kindergarten. And you get into Aurobindo's yoga that is way beyond these kindergarten yogas. Now, this was certainly not the opinion of Dr. Tyberg in Los Angeles, who had her own Aurobindo center and was a great, I would call her a saint with ease. But I don't know if she'd want that, but she's passed on, but she was very saintly and very loving and wonderful, and she was good to me and helped me in many ways and inspired me. She loved to just keep her place open on weekends so people could come and read the beautiful writings of Sri Aurobindo. Oh, I could talk a long time because she did so much for yoga in Los Angeles and in Southern California. But so I'm saying that there are great Aurobindo yogis. There are great ones. But there are many who dispense with regular yoga, saying it's kindergarten, and then they do a mental trip mouthing the teachings of Sri Aurobindo without experiencing them. So our goal is to have greater spiritual experience and not just a wonderful encyclopedia of great yoga ideas. We want experiences. We need experiences. For example, this state when you're able to witness your mind. You clearly see the mind, but you're not in the mind. You're not pulled into the thoughts or the movie that you're watching of your mind or your life. That clear vantage point is called the buddhi, in which you witness calmly and with goodwill the mind, the emotions, but you're distinct from them. That's a high state, but the Aurobindo folks were really unhappy with other yogis who were out of Aurobindo's teachings, because some people thought that this witnessing state was what Sri Aurobindo called the supermind. And supermind is spiritual awareness. They're absolutely right that the buddhi is not the supermind. But at the same time, this point gives a lot of folks the license to think that everything else is wrong with yogis out there. That they don't understand the difference between buddhi and supermind, then they don't understand any yoga. Or at a kindergarten level, they're fine. So I just thought it'd be fun to enjoy the profound teachings of Sri Aurobindo, knowing that I'm not an expert in Aurobindo. I'm just a lover of the work of Aurobindo, an appreciator. And it helped me on my path. So, My problem with Aurobindo folk is very often they're just doing mental activities and fantasies and not having real spiritual experiences. That's my problem. And I'm saying that Aurobindo wants everybody to have spiritual experiences. But as a result of knowing them and studying more about Aurobindo and what he said, and his writings, which are very complex with a large vocabulary, I love these ideas from Sri Aurobindo, that when you go to meditate or practice yoga, there's a cooperation of God, nature, and you, the individual. And you need all three to come together and work together. God, nature very often wants you to wander off into other focuses. Nature has to cooperate if you're going to focus on God. Nature has to abandon just biological force and have you move into spiritual force. So you need nature's help, God's mercy. Yogananda used to say, it's 50% God's grace, 25% Guru's grace, and 25% the devotee's grace that you have enlightenment. And that's a wonderful statement to bear in mind. And Yogananda used to say, then where is your grace? You, the devotee, are you giving it your grace? Because God is, and the Guru is. Are you, the devotee, giving your portion of grace? Takes all three. So anyway, it's a beautiful idea. Sri Aurobindo also says there's the ascent and the descent, and both are so important. Rising up to spiritual consciousness and bringing that awareness down thoroughly through your whole being. That's very yogic, and he emphasizes that. We need aspiration. We need something within us to push us and lift us in our expectations, in our openness toward God. We want to let go of the not-self, rejecting the not-self, recognizing that our ego is not our true self, recognizing that, and recognizing all kinds of outer things in our personality, for example. They're not really us. And coming to surrender, take the beautiful Spirit of God, open to it, and allow the Spirit of God to substitute, to take the place of some negative habit or negative understanding or ignorance, substitute the light, the awareness, the wholeness in our being at every level, a substitution of the real taking the place of the false or the fantasized. And then comes the descent of spiritual awareness down through the whole being. Spirit, truth coming over you and abiding in you. So he said some interesting words here. Looking at the main yogas, the traditional yogas, wisdom, Hatha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, he defined these different yogas that you're aware of, probably. He defined them quite strictly. He says each of these yogas are related to human capacities or powers as a means of connection, as a means of yoga connection. He calls these different powers that we have vehicles for yoga. Here's how you can go with the help of yoga to God, to the divine. So, the principle of yoga, I'm now quoting Sri Aurobindo, principle of yoga is the turning of one or all powers of our human existence into a means of reaching yoga, oneness, wholeness, and spiritual realization. So, looking at yoga, here's Sri Aurobindo's approach. What is your best vehicle or means of connection with Spirit, the infinite? What is your vehicle? Your best means of connection with Spirit? So if your main attention, here's how he phrased it, if your main attention is naturally on the body and physical life, your vehicle is Hatha Yoga. Stilling, collecting, purifying through the yoga postures and the science of Hatha Yoga, the science and the art, postures and breathing practices. And they can be so elaborate, I'm just amazed. I went to a sideshow once, the Edmonton exhibition up in Canada, and the guy did all kinds of moves with his abdomen to get us to go into the big tent and watch more moves. But he astounded me. I learned later that those are standard yoga practices to help the digestion, that he was doing Hatha Yoga. But it was amazing when you're a kid to see the possibilities of your muscles rippling across your abdomen. If your main attention is awareness, I've said it wrong. If your main attention and awareness is naturally in the mind, in your thoughts, then the mind is your vehicle or instrument. So Raja Yoga is your way. The mind is disciplined, purified, and directed toward the divine by doing postures and pranayamas, which direct the life force, and then learning some meditation practices till you can have a high state of absorption in the true self. So what happens is Raja Yoga is often considered generally yoga of the will and of the attuned will. So he's saying differently there about Raja Yoga. And then there are people who are in Raja Yoga saying, Raja Yoga is the king of yogas. It takes all the other yogas, combines them, and that's what Raja Yoga is. All of them combined. So, moving on. If your main attention is on reasoning and seeking to understand your vehicle, I'm saying I should have put a comma there. If your main attention is on reasoning and seeking to understand, comma, your vehicle is reason. You use reason to get to God, and that's called Jnana Yoga. If your main awareness is on doing, on works, on service, your vehicle is Karma Yoga. If your main awareness is on emotional and aesthetic feelings and powers, then devotion is your vehicle, and Bhakti Yoga is your yoga. You turn all your emotional and aesthetic energies Godward in a perfect purity, intensity, and infinite passion of seeking God, seeking God's love. And then Sri Aurobindo says, or all three. You could take Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Devotional yoga, the yoga of action, and the yoga of wisdom. He says that's the triple way. But all power is in the end one. All power is really soul power, a synthetic yoga joined together. So we come to Sri Aurobindo's method. But what is your vehicle? Ramakrishna says the emotions are strongest in most people and pull the mind around just like a kid pulls a toy around. So for most people, emotional power is the vehicle. Anyway, you think, you choose. But here we come to Sri Aurobindo's method. The method we have to pursue then is to put our whole conscious being into relation and contact with the divine, and call God in to transform our entire being into His. So that in a sense, God Himself is the doer of the yoga. I guess I should repeat this. The method we have to pursue then is to put our whole conscious being into relation and contact with the divine, and call Him in to transform our entire being into His. So that, in a sense, God Himself, the real person in us, becomes the doer of the yoga, or the sadhaka, the doer, of the sadhana, the spiritual practice. So we end with the method that he recommends. The method we have to pursue then is to put our whole conscious being into relation and contact with the divine, and call Him in to transform our entire being into His, or hers, so that, in a sense, God Himself, the real person in us, becomes the doer of the yoga. I hope this little inspiration from Sri Aurobindo is helpful to you. God bless you.